So we did always look on the bright side of life for the film. The others weren't over enthusiastic. Well, it's all right, it'll do. And it sort of grew on people because the crew started singing it in Tunisia. So they thought, oh, maybe we've got something here. And of course it went into the film. George Harrison produced the single, and he was wonderful. He really liked my arrangement, which would, pat on the back. But it really came into its own in the Falklands War when the crew of the Sheffield and the Coventry were singing it in the lifeboats, and they got taken up by the football crowds. And Michael Palin called me one day and said, "Are you watching the European Cup final, or the Nations Cup final, or whatever it was called?" And it was Germany v Denmark, and the whole crowd was singing "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life." And I knew then that we had a track for the ages, let's say. So yeah, that was an amazing thing. And my association with them has continued to this day, which is now, 52 years. It's unbelievable, really. I do events with Michael Palin and I saw Terry Jones a lot during his illness. I saw Terry Gilliam last year. We put on a memorial show for Neil Innes that he came and performed in. So it was terrific. And then the other sequence that I got was a bit later in Titanic, when the orchestra plays on deck as the ship sinks. I did all the period music in Titanic, and I was the historical music advisor. So I went to bed in London one Friday night at about 1 a.m, got up about 8:30, and there were 10 messages on my answer machine. I thought, that's odd, because there was nothing last night. And I played them, and the first 4 or 5 were the producer's secretary, could you call us in Mexico? So 6 till 9 were the producer, call me, call me, call me. And number 10 was James Cameron, call me now. So I was like, oh my God, what's happened? Because by then I was off the film. They had my music. I had nothing to do. They were filming in Mexico. So I rang James Cameron and said, it's John Altman here in London. He said, "Nearer my God to thee, how does it go?" I went, nearer my God. He said, "Stop. Again." I went, nearer my... And I could hear he'd put a megaphone to the telephone. And I thought, he's got everyone in the water, and they've been waiting for 8 hours for me to wake up, because nobody knows how it goes. And there's nobody in America who can tell him. Well, of course there is, but he wouldn't know who to call. So I sang it, and the violinist wrote it down. And that's what you see in the film, is the scene that everyone remembers. Oh, the ship sinks and the band plays, and it's been a privilege to play with. It's like, oh, that's how it was put together, because he wanted to do it live, and nobody knew it. Incredible. So yeah, basically that was the 90s. It was mainly doing film after film after film, commercial after commercial after commercial, and sort of jumping between London, LA, London, LA. And then I would do fun things like I'd play jazz in America. Somebody reminded me yesterday that I would go to when they shot Seinfeld, and I would play with the relief band, or whatever you want to call them, who played when the scenes were being reset, because I liked to watch them filming it. So I became a sort of a fixture at Seinfeld, which was great, and Michael Richards, who played Kramer, found my first apartment in Hollywood for me, which was very nice of him. But that really took me through the next few years. But I would play occasionally at a thing called the China Club, which was a jam in LA. And when I call it a jam, I mean the band would be Greg Fillinganes, Nathan East, Herbie Hancock, Jeff Skunk Baxter, Steve Ferrone, and you would get Bruce Willis on harmonica or Harry Dean Stanton. But then you get Gary Busey singing Not Fade Away for 25 minutes with no solos, you know. So it was, you know, can't somebody say enough, you know? But I missed doing a sort of, I don't know if you call it a funky music jam, but it was that R&B type thing. And I met a guy called Patrick Allen, who at the time was singing with the Drifters, but he'd been Michael Jackson's choreographer. And I said to him, or we both said, wouldn't it be great to do a night in London with a band where people could come and sit in and jam R&B? So we started, and it was Monday nights at a place called the 10 Room. And we basically got 3 men and a dog for about 6 weeks, you know, nothing, pleading with people to come. And then on my birthday night, Lionel Richie came in and Shaka Khan came in, and they both sang. And suddenly we were the place to be. So we got The Roots, Will Smith, we showcased John Legend for the first time. Pharrell, Anthony Hamilton, Ja Rule, Sean Paul, and they all came and performed for nothing, you know, just because they were in London. And the audience would be people like 16-year-old Amy Winehouse, 17-year-old Joss Stone, and they would perform. So I was sort of mentoring Amy at the same time. And we did that for about 6 or 7 years. And then we moved to a club called the Pigalle, where we had people like Jill Scott Prince came every week, which is how I wound up playing at the O2 after party with the New Power Generation. Cynthia Erivo was one of our backing singers, as was Jessie J. So, you know, we started a lot of big careers, basically. And I was doing that and still doing the films. So I did like Shall We Dance, and I'd already been to Moscow to do a film in the 80s, but then I went to India and did a movie in Kerala. So I was the first Westerner to do a Russian film, first Westerner to do an Indian film, which is not bad, you know, not bad CV. And yeah, I mean, the career has continued along all those lines, which has been great. And today I'm still gigging. I'll occasionally write for a film. I did all the period music in Michael Winterbottom's last movie. I'm trying to play as much as I can. I've got my big band, and I've got my quintet. And the thing with my big band is I started celebrating the pop arrangements and the film arrangements and the film writing that I did, which I always kept separate from the jazz. And I thought, do you know what? I should celebrate it in the big band. So we play the James Bond theme, we play Moon Dance, my arrangement, we play Walking in the Air, we play Kissing a Fool, we play That Old Devil Called Love, and It's Oh So Quiet, you know, and it goes down the storm, which is great. And it's different from every other big band because they don't do any of those songs. Well, I think I know, I'm the only person who ever played sax with Little Richard and the original Comets and conducted the London Symphony Orchestra and the Royal Philharmonic. You know, there's no one else who does that. No one else. But I loved music. You know, that was a great thing. And what my family taught me was good music and bad music. So when I'm going back to when I'm 5 years old and playing records, I would put on Count Basie, then I would put on Elvis Presley, then I'd put on Bix Beiderbecke, then I'd put on Borodin's Symphony. And I never made a distinction. You know, I never thought, oh, I shouldn't be listening to that or I should be listening to that. And then I was lucky because I wound up playing with the new power generation, which is like the apex of funk. And then I would play with Red Holloway and Plaz Johnson and people like that. So it would be right in the modern jazz scene. And then I'd be playing with, as I said, the original Comets on the anniversary of Rock Around the Clock. They reunited the original band, and I'm playing sax in with them. It's fantastic, fantastic memory. And Little Richard. And being accepted by, Lowell Fulson and B.B. King and Peter Green. So I was a blues man. And none of them would really know that I was doing anything else. And in fact, musically, I would switch my brain to playing in the style that they're expected to hear. Because very early on, I think I was playing with Muddy Waters and his band at my party. And I was playing two choruses of blues. And I thought, towards the end of the second chorus, I thought, I'll show him what I can do, And I did something really flashy. And immediately I did it, went wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Because, you've got to be true to the style that you're working in. Same with my arranging. I wouldn't arrange for Barry White the way I did for Rod Stewart. Totally different. Or Simple Minds. They're all unique. And what you have to do when you're writing arrangements is find a balance between putting yourself into what you're writing. Otherwise, they would have hired the person they'd worked with for years before. Or, while at the same time being respectful to how they are and what they do. So, for example, when I did Diana Ross's Christmas album with the Royal Philharmonic, in the back of my mind was, what does she do? How does she sound? What will cushion her and set her off to the best advantage? Quite a few arrangers that I know right, they've hired me, they want me, I'm going to write what I write, and that's it. And sometimes that can be a car crash. Because people will hire you and then go, oh, hang on a minute, this is not quite what we envisaged hearing, And it's a lot easier now because everybody does demos. But I tell people I never did a demo for George Michael. I never did a demo for Bright Side of Life. I never did a demo for the Ruttles. Never did a demo for any of them, But it's all changed now. You have to demo everything. And samples are so amazing. But I've never got with it, I have to confess. Well, I'm basically a saxophone player, which I'm probably the only thing I would unleash on the world, happily now. I now specialise in the curved soprano, mainly because I like it, but also because it's light. You can carry it. And I was a baritone player for many, many years. But I played all the saxophones over the years. My clarinet playing, because Sid gave me his clarinet, which is not the normal clarinet, I sort of gave up on because I could never be as good as he was. And I stopped playing the flute because I really needed to specialise in it. Although there is a funny story attached to it. I produced all the music for a lot of the ITV spectaculars over the years. I played in them and I wrote the arrangements and I produced the music. And one of the things I produced for ITV was Saturday Night Live with Harry Enfield and Ben Elton, where I would do the music every week. So one week I would never know who I would get. It might be Slade, it might be a rapper. One week I got the Moody Blues. And they thought they were going to mime, but there was this standoff with the union. And the compromise was that they mimed their latest single, but they played Nights in White Satin, which everyone knows. And for some reason, Ray, the flute player, couldn't play the solo. It kept going wrong, and take after take after take after take. And I was and am friendly with Justin Hayward. And I said, are we ever going to get it right? And he said, no, I don't think so. And I said, I used to play the flute. He said, well, why don't you go out and do it? And I said, well, it's going to be a bit embarrassing. He said, no, go out there and make some flute chat. So I went out and I said, oh, is that a Haynes flute? And Ray said, do you play it? And I said, well, I used to. And he shoved it in my hand. And he said, you play the bloody thing then. So having not touched a flute for about, I guess, 14 years, I played the flute solo on Nights in White Satin, which Ray mimed to. And it's up on YouTube, so anybody can see it. If you put in Nights in White Satin live 1980s, there it is, my flute playing. And I also say I'm the worst pianist ever to record with Jeff Beck and Eric Clapton, which I am. And that's a funny story. The band we had for the second Secret Policeman's Ball, which Ray Russell was in, of course, but the Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck did a whole sequence themselves. And they had, I think, either Mo or Neil Murray on bass. John Etheridge was on second guitar and Cousin Simon on drums. And I agreed to play piano on it. And the piano was off stage because we couldn't wheel it on and off with the comedians. There was no time. So it was in the wings. So we did Further On Up the Road, and we did 'Cause We've Ended as Lovers, Jeff's feature and Eric's feature, which is fine. Jeff's feature, I played it very nicely, a nice slow number with nice changes. I could get round it, no problem. We start playing Further On Down the Road, and it's a fast blues. So I'm playing whatever. Suddenly somebody taps me on the shoulder, and I'm in the wings, and says, excuse me, and excuse me, have you seen John Cleese anywhere? I'm going, and they're recording it, and I lose my place, and it's all gone horribly wrong, And anyway, I get back, 12 bars later, I start again. Excuse me, somebody else. Excuse me, where's the dressing room for... I'm trying... Anyway, again, it's on YouTube. And I don't think many people can hear it, but I can hear a piano starting and stopping, and starting again and stopping. But no, I wouldn't inflict my piano playing on anyone, really. Yeah, as for awards, obviously, I've been, I won an Emmy, I won the Anthony Asquith Award. I have 4 Grammy certificates, which I never knew about. And somebody said, oh, you can get them. So I got them. And various gold and platinum and silver discs, including a diamond disc, which I'd never heard of, for Faith, which was for 10 million sales in America. Unbelievable. So yeah, it's nice. I mean, getting an award's always very nice. It's not why I do what I do, or I'm not looking for it. But I got a couple of Lifetime Achievement Awards as well, and I got an honorary doctorate from Sussex University. So that's always nice. It's sort of recognition. One thing I always consider myself lucky with is I never suffered from stage fright. So I could walk out in front of 3 people or 30,000 people and feel exactly the same about what I was doing, as long as I felt that, my instrument was working okay or my brain was engaged. If I'm playing in large stage, say with Van Morrison, we're playing large festivals or large venues or whatever, what I would tend to do, I mean, I'd be wrapped up in the music, but if I needed to, and I don't think I ever really did it consciously, if I could possibly focus on one person and think I'm playing to them, but I would never do that consciously. I mean, I would be so involved in my whole body was into the experience of making the music. So it's almost like I wouldn't notice that there's a crowd, or I wouldn't notice that there's only 4 people. Or it's interesting because you go into, I wouldn't call it a trance, but you go into this space where you're reacting to the music, and that's what matters. And that's the only thing that really matters. And whether it's, Wembley Stadium or a little folk club that nobody's remembered to turn up at, it's the same experience for me, definitely. And as I say, I've never felt, well, I'm probably lying a bit, because I used to do school plays and I'd get nervous behind a curtain because I think I'm going to forget my lines. And I can tell one nervous story. They did a commemorative program about Titanic, 100 years to the day after it had sunk, in the Belfast shipyard, or the theatre in Belfast that's on the site of the ship, Garland and Woolf shipyard. And I was a musical director and arranger, so I was conducting for Brian Ferry and Misha Paris and this one and that one and the other one. And one of the people, we had the Ulster Orchestra, and I was conducting for Alfie Boe, singing Bring Him Home from Les Mis. And there was the harp ensemble of Ireland, plus the symphony orchestra. And it started, and they all had their own idea of what the tempo was, let me put it that way. So it was a bit of a mess. And Alfie was freaking out. I can't sing to this, it's got to stop, And so I said, well, look, the orchestral harpist is right on the money. Mute the others and then bring them in as the piece goes on, which they did, and it worked really well. So that was all right. But Nicola Benedetti was going to play some Shostakovich. And I'm not a classical conductor. I never pretended to be. But obviously for this, I had to be. And the record company sent me a recording by someone else, because she hadn't yet recorded it. And when she turned up on the day, her interpretation was completely different. Of course, it was her personal interpretation. So I'm conducting this very difficult piece of Shostakovich with Nicola Benedetti playing on live television. And halfway through it, I thought, I've gone wrong. I've made a mistake. And they're following me. And I've ruined it. And she'll never talk to me again. And I'll never work again. And we finished it. We got to the end and walked off. And they changed the scene, because they had a clip of film of whoever it was, Kenneth Branagh or someone, So while clip's on, they reset the stage. So I go off, and she comes towards me. I thought, this is it. I'm now going to get my career finished. She came up to me and said, that went well, didn't it? And I went, oh, thank God for that. And again, looking at it, it's on one of the YouTube or somewhere like that, where I got the video. And I can actually see myself panicking. I'm behind her, and my back's to her. But I can see my body language suddenly tense up. And it's perfectly fine. It's not wrong at all. But something in my brain suddenly maybe triggered nerves or something, and then suddenly, I can't do this. I'm doing it wrong. I can't do it. But I was perfectly on the ball. There was a show called The Black Mikado in the West End, and the guy who wrote it or put it together, it was basically the Mikado with an all-black cast. And it was Floella Benjamin and Patty Boulay and Derek Griffiths and Norman Beaton. Very good cast. I don't think it would ever go on now. But George Lanyo, who was a Ghanaian sax player, it was his show. And he had to go back to Ghana, so I went in as a dep, which is fine, except the band were on stage wearing loincloths. So I think I looked a bit out of place. You know, what's that guy doing there? And on about the fourth night of the gig, I was playing baritone, and not a sound came out. Suddenly, I used a very hard reed, and suddenly I couldn't play it. I just could not play it. So I literally mimed the whole gig, because I didn't have all I had was the same reeds, you know, the same box of reeds. So I sat on stage miming for the whole show. And next day I bought some softer reeds and I was back to normal. And then one day I did, my saxophone broke on stage, a spring went, and I somehow had to disguise it. And there was a very high-placed member of the royal family who said to me, "You were having some problems there." And I thought, my God, they're musical. How did they know? They said, no, you kept shaking your instrument. I thought I covered it really well, you know. I'm looking at it going like that. But that was it. Generally, you know, I walk on and I do what I do. Yeah. I love to go out and play. So if somebody, I mean, I do the jazz things and that's great, you know. But if I get somebody like, as I say, my friend's over tonight, who's Prince's arranger, and he wanted me to play with Victor Wooten, but my back is saying don't go. I mean, the new power generation, they ask that I come and play with them. I just come on for one number. I played with James Tormé one number as a special guest, you know, and I love it. I enjoy it, you know, and it goes down well. There aren't many other people really around. I mean, I used to play with Maria Maldau when she came over. Sadly, a lot of the people I played with aren't with us anymore. So that narrows it down, you know. But I just did tribute to Les Cousins, and I played on that, and I played with a bunch of people I haven't played with for 50 years, which was lovely. And I mean, there's nobody I'd really turn down. I mean, the corollary, if you like, are the what ifs and the might have beens, you know, that never really happened, that I would love to have happened, but I don't dwell on them. But when I wrote my book, I thought I've got to write a chapter of films I just missed and records that never quite happened or tours that never quite happened. And there were things that I went, oh, shame that never happened. The Standards album with Dusty Springfield that she was too sick to do. A big band album with Amy Winehouse that we talked about that we never did. Film-wise, I was the second in two, you know, and didn't get the gig. Austin Powers, Bowfing. There are films crop up all the time on Band of Brothers, you know, where I was one away. One film I didn't get, I wound up orchestrating for the guy who got it, because the director liked me so much when we met. He said, "I'm not going to offer you the gig, but I'd love you to be on the film." So I wound up doing the film in sort of by proxy, you know. That was interesting. But I do, you know, I don't dwell on things that might have happened. I did do an album with Tom Springfield that was very interesting, because it was a vanity project. He never wanted it released. And it was an album of songs he liked, plus all his songs that he wrote, like Georgie Girl and Carnival Is Over and all the Seekers hits, you know. That was really good. I found a cassette of it. I also did a bunch of demos for Michael Jackson. He commissioned a show about Peter Pan, and we did all the recording in London and sent it off to him, and it never happened.